All right. Welcome, everyone. I'd like to call this Planning Council meeting to order. I declare that we do have quorum. And do we have Deputy Mayor Armour virtually? There he is. He's online with us. All right. I'm going to ask the mayor to read the land acknowledgement.
Okay, thank you. I would like to respectfully acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Anishinaabeg under the terms of the Robinson-Huron Treaty No. 61 of 1850 and the Williams Treaties of 1923. We commit to acknowledge, learn, educate, create opportunity, honor sacred places, and take actions toward real truth and reconciliation in support of our commitment to walking the path together in respect, peace, and harmony for future generations. Miigwech.
Thank you very much. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest? I see none. All right. I'd like to welcome everyone to the public portion of the meeting to consider applications to amend the Community Planning Permit Bylaw 2022-97, pursuant to Section 34 of the Planning Act. The procedure of the public meeting will be as follows. A brief explanation of the purpose and effect of the application and any correspondence received to date will be given by staff. The applicant or the representative will be asked to provide any additional comments without repeating the information already outlined by staff. Any members of the public present, in person or electronically, will then be permitted to ask questions or provide comments respecting the applications. Council will then have the opportunity to question the applicant, the planner, or anyone giving presentation. Once the public meeting is concluded, the input is received and the proposed amendments will be considered by council. Any persons making representation are requested to first state their name and mailing address, and please note that presentations are limited to 10 minutes. It's important to note that should council approve any bylaw amendment applications this afternoon, the applicant, the municipality, and certain specified persons and public bodies, as defined by the Planning Act, may appeal the decision. During the 20-day appeal period, which commences on the date on which notice of council's decision is provided, no building permits may be issued or other work commenced. If you wish to be notified of the passage of a bylaw, any appeals or possible Ontario Land Tribunal hearings, you must file either with the recording secretary or with the clerk a written request for notification prior to the passage of the proposed bylaw. Respecting the community planning permit applications, it is important to note that a council decision on such applications may only be appealed by the applicant themselves. Each notice of complete application and public meeting included an explanation of the purpose and effect of the proposed amendment, and notice was required to be posted at the subject lands. Notice was therefore considered to have been provided in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and applicable sections of the Huntsville Official Plan. And with that, we'll go to our first item, and Director Maxwell is speaking to the alternative rural lots.
Thank you, Chair Stone. This application is a purely technical one at this point. With the approval of the amended OPA 6 by the district, we need to update the area for these alternative rural residential lots. No comments were received. The district had no objection, obviously, but we didn't receive any comments from anyone else.
Thank you very much. I'll go to members of the public present that would like to speak to this. Please come down, sir, if you'd like to. We need to have you at the microphone, so.
Hear what she said.
You didn't hear what?
It's a comment about the proposed project we're speaking right now, or?
No, it's a. Go ahead, Director Maxwell.
Sorry, this is for the alternative rural residential lot standard zoning application. So, yeah, it's which application are you here for? Oh, okay. Yeah, no, this is not that application. So,
All right. Is there anyone online that would like to speak to this? You'll need to raise your electronic hand.
Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thank you very much. Council members, any comments or questions? I see none. Moved by Mayor Alcock, seconded by... What? Oh, I'm sorry. Seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve Community Planning Permit Bylaw Amendment Application CPPA 36 2025 HTE, the purpose and effect of which is to update the minimum lot area for alternative rural residential lot standards. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that carries. All right. Kelsey's going to join us to speak about the 72 Center Street South application.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 72 Center Street South. The property is within the urban residential designation of the official plan and within the, urban residential medium precinct with site-specific exception R30417. Several planning applications have been considered on the subject lands. In 2019, a rezoning and 3 consent applications were approved. The zoning amendment added a specific exception to permit 6 residential dwelling units and increase the southern interior side yard setback. In 2022, a concurrent rezoning and consent application was approved to sever off a further portion of the lands just to the south, so over here. And then there was an amendment to the site-specific exception to reduce the permitted amount of dwelling units to 5 and to reduce the minimum rear yard setback from 10 meters to 6.2 meters for a 2-story dwelling unit. As a result of these applications, a 4-plex has been constructed, as you can see here, and as well as, but the 2-story accessory structure with the ground floor garage and residential unit above was only approved but not yet constructed, so it would have been in this location. The applicant is now proposing to construct a duplex in lieu of the garage with dwelling unit above. The bylaw amendment is to propose to change the precinct from urban residential medium to urban residential medium with exception, to reduce the minimum front required rear yard setback from 7 meters to 5 meters for the duplex, and reduce a minimum required setback for not abutting the street from 1 meter to 0 meters along the north property line for parking. So you can see here's the reduced rear yard setback and then also the reduced landscape buffer. The amendment also proposes to remove the previous site-specific exception that applies to the lands, with none of the previous exceptions being carried over. The reduced landscape buffer is to address the existing conditions of the parking area. However, the previous site plan, a buffer was shown in this location on the north side, in addition to a retaining wall and a rain garden. In 2021, a rain garden was shown at the front of the property, and it was noted that landscape buffers would be provided. The buffer and rain garden have not been provided or shown on the current application. And the 0 meter buffer is not considered appropriate given the abutting low-density residential. So you can see here is the retaining wall that has been constructed, and then the abutting residential uses. And the duplex is proposed here. The subject's lands are within the intensification corridor in the built-up area in Huntsville. The official plan states that a mix of residential densities and dwelling types from single detached dwellings to higher density apartment buildings will be contemplated in these areas. The area surrounding this property is comprised of single detached dwellings, and the proposed development contributes to a varied mix of housing options in the area. The reduced rear yard setback is appropriate because development on the abutting lands is at the front of the property. Therefore, the development is closer to the abutting rear yard, so the overlook and privacy concerns have been mitigated. It should be noted that following the publication of the report, the applicant did confirm that there is some space at the bottom of the retaining wall, that it would be 0.8 meters. That would be adequate for a buffer to be provided. And staff would be supportive of this 0.2 meter reduction should planting be provided and shown on and implemented through the community planning permit bylaw. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, and no comments were received. So respecting the 6th unit and the reduction to the rear yard setback for the duplex, the application would appear to conform with the official plan and be consistent with the provincial planning statement. Respecting the reduced northern landscape buffer, the application would not conform to the test intent of the official plan or the provincial planning statement if it remains as 0 meters. However, should it be increased to 0.8 meters through a planting, this application would appear to conform with the official plan and the provincial planning statement. As such, recommendation in this instance for all matters would be supported by staff, and therefore we'd be recommending approval should it be increased to 0.8 meters for the northern landscape buffer. There is a substitution for this request prepared already, but should you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or the representative to make comments. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Chair Stone and members of council. John P. Gallagher here today on behalf of Sean and Amanda DeCourcy. I think Kelsey has explained the application quite well. As she had stated, this is in the intensification designation. The lot in theory could have 7.7 units based on it without even having the intensification applied. The location is currently void of vegetation, and it is a very small footprint of the building at only 11 meters by 13.25, which will allow for a couple of more apartment buildings. The overall coverage of the site is 24.1, whereas the zone allows for 35%. The area of the setback at the rear, as you saw by the photos, there is a bit of a drop off to the rear of the site is vegetative lands. The house at the rear of the site is more orientated towards Rogers Road than abutting the site. When Kelsey had her report together, I did have discussions with Sean about how best to address that buffering issue, and as Kelsey had stated, there is some land below the retaining wall. The retaining wall sits at a higher elevation, so it's practically over the roofs of some of the houses that are on the street, Rogers Road there. However, Sean didn't have any issue with having some planting along the base of the retaining wall, as well as putting mesh in the fence to create more of a visual buffer from the adjacent property and to create a sense of place amongst the residents of the apartment complex. Therefore, we concur with staff on the revised recommendation of 0.8 and ask that you support this application for a couple more apartments close to town, walking distance, and on full municipal services. I'd be glad to answer any questions should you have any. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I'll go to members of the public that would like to speak to this application. I see no hands here. If you're online, you'll need to raise your electronic hand.
Chair Stone, I see no hands raised.
Thank you very much. Council members, Councillor Cloutier.
Through you, Chair Stone. Thank you. Just one question. I agree with this, but just the retaining wall. Is it an engineered wall, or what? Is it poured, or is it stamped by somebody, or?
The engineered wall had to be approved by building department, and that was done previously on the site. And so there was engineering there, those blocks, and they have tiebacks in, as well as the curtain and proper backfill on those as well.
Okay, thank you.
Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Just a quick comment. I wanted to say thank you to both the applicant and staff for working out the change going from 0 to 0.8. That was the only question I had when I read the report, and now I'm pleased to be able to support the whole application.
All right, so we have a motion to substitute. I need a mover and a seconder. Okay. All right, so the motion to substitute, moved by Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Renwick. Be it resolved that Planning Council substitutes motion DEV 2025-117, CPPA 30, 2025 HTE, DeCourcy, 72 Center Street South for the following. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve Community Planning Permit Amendment Application CPPA 30, 2025 HTE, the purpose and effect of which is to change the precinct on the lands from an urban residential medium UR2 precinct to a urban residential medium precinct. 2, 1, reduce the minimum required rear yard setback from 7 meters to 5 meters for a duplex, and reduce the minimum required landscape buffer not abutting the street from 1 meter to 0.8 meters for the northern property line for parking, and further that previous site-specific exception R3-0417 be removed from the lands. Comments or questions? All in favor? And that carries. And now I will call the main motion, no, give me a second here.
That's the motion as substitute.
Right. Same movers and seconders? So, main motion as amended, all in favor? And that carries. All right. Moving on, Kelsey, the West Browns Road application.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. There we go. Through you, the subject property is located at 268 West Browns Road. The property is within the waterfront designation and within the waterfront 1 precinct with site-specific exception S310450 with natural constraint 1 and 2 overlay. This property has also been in front of council before in relation to several planning applications. In 2019, there was a application to the Committee of Adjustment to approve a consent application for a lot addition, which included a condition for the severed and retained lands to be rezoned. A zoning bylaw amendment application followed to facilitate the lot addition and the development of a new single detached dwelling on the retained lands. This approval was provided under the pretenses that the existing dwelling was to be removed and no relief was provided for the existing dwelling. In 2021, a site plan application was approved to permit a single detached residential dwelling with an attached garage, a detached pool house, and the existing single detached dwelling was to be removed. So this is the 2021 site plan that's been, so this is what was proposed in 2021, the new house with garage, and then the pool house, and then this was the existing dwelling that was to be removed. There was a condition within the registered site plan for the existing dwelling to be removed following the construction of the new dwelling, as mentioned. The building permit for the new dwelling also issued a condition that the old dwelling be removed once occupancy was granted for the new building. The new building was constructed and the original single detached dwelling remained on the property and has been utilized as a secondary residential dwelling unit. The retention of this building is contrary to the approved site plan and site-specific zoning exception. The applicant is now proposing to keep this 240 square meter, 2-story single detached dwelling on the property on a temporary basis by recognizing it as a 2-story detached secondary residential dwelling unit, SRDU. To facilitate this proposal, the current application requests that the SRDU be permitted as a temporary accessory use for up to a 3-year period. Where these uses are permitted, it's generally limited to 75 square meters in gross floor area, In this instance, the footprint is 240 square meters, which is being triple the gross floor area permitted. The existing gross floor area is to ensure that these uses remain secondary in nature and do not result in overdevelopment. The existing SDRU was the original dwelling on the property and does not appear secondary in nature. Upon site inspection, it also appeared that the shoreline activity area has also been expanded through the addition of a patio and pathway. The addition of the activity area extends the cumulative width beyond 15 meters, which creates further noncompliance with the site plan and the agreement registered on title. So this is the existing SDRU, the old house, and then the new house. And then this is the patio that has been added. The waterfront designation anticipates linear, low-density shoreline residential development that respects the character and natural setting of the waterfront area. To achieve this, the official plan establishes guidelines to limit visual impacts of development along the shoreline, noting the disturbances of the lot should be limited. In this instance, this other dwelling is approximately 130 meters from the shoreline on a higher point of the property. Therefore, it remains partially visible from Fairy Lake and creates the visual impact of two dwellings. SRDUs are also not permitted within the waterfront area to ensure the protection of lake health and habitat, as well as limit density around sensitive waterfront environments. The official plan does discuss allowing temporary use bylaws. Before passing these bylaws, council must be satisfied that the proposed use meets certain conditions. These includes compatibility, provisions for adequate parking, availability to servicing. The uses must be have appropriate access, but they also must be temporary in nature and not be a permanent building. In this case, it is a permanent building and not temporary in nature, and it must also meet the official plan and then its intent. And as SRDUs are not permitted in the waterfront area, we do not believe it meets the intent of the official plan. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act and to the Fairy Lake Association. No comments have been received. District staff did review the application and provided comments, noting that the Muskoka official plan does not permit secondary residential units within the waterfront designation, and they would not be supportive of this application. Through staff's review and analysis, the application would appear not to conform with the intent of the official plan or be consistent with the provincial planning statement. Therefore, staff are recommending denial. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'll call on the applicant or the representative to make comments.
Thank you. John P. Gallagher on behalf of Ward Edmonds, whose application is before us. I think Kelsey has explained the application well. This application, the purpose of the application is not to recognize a secondary dwelling unit. It's to allow for a temporary use of an existing structure on a property, and the key word there is temporary. The owner wants to continue to use that house as he has family living in there, and he would like to continue that for a period of 3 years with a potential extension of 3 additional years. There are no plans for additions to the dwellings on either of the properties. The home at the water is fairly new construction, and the original home is habitable and has been maintained through the years. As Kelsey had stated, there is a section in the official plan that speaks to temporary uses, and it says that council may pass a temporary use bylaw to authorize the use of land, building, or structures for any purpose that is otherwise prohibited in the zoning bylaw in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. Prior to passing it, council should be satisfied the following temporary use meets the following conditions. It's compatible with the neighboring uses. Adequate parking can be provided on site. Services can be provided. Appropriate access and an adverse impact on traffic will not be created. The construction of a permanent building or structure is not required, and the use is in general conformity with the official plan. As I had said in my planning report, this area is more rural in nature, given the proximity away from the lake. The building's about 126 meters away from the lake. With respect to those clauses, the lands are zoned residential and intended to be continued for residential purposes. It does not introduce a new type of land use such as commercial or industrial. The land adjoining the surrounding the site are also residential uses. The second dwelling, the one further back, is approximately 18 meters from the west side and 42 meters from the east side yard. And I think that shows that it's not incompatible. It's significantly greater than the 6-meter setback for the precinct. Each of the buildings has sufficient parking in excess of 4 spots. Access is over a private right-of-way, which the property has legal access to West Browns Road. That's been recently upgraded with a paved surface, and the entrance on Browns Road is on an outside corner. It provides access for numerous dwellings in the area. There is no construction required for the site. It will merely use an existing residential dwelling that has been in existence for some time instead of demolishing it. The waterfront and rural areas allow for residential uses. This area of the second dwelling is more related to the rural designation, not the waterfront designation. There's no water access for the dwelling to the rear. It is located a significant distance away from the water, and it does not physically or functionally relate to the waterfront. Ward also asked, he saw the report, and with regards to the patio, he would ask that that be recognized. It's a small patio. He has spent over $100,000 providing new trees, and those trees are also included in his shoreline activity area, an area that was behind the house, that between the house and the waterfront, that had been void of vegetation for many years. His house on that strip of shoreline probably retains the most mature vegetation of all the homes along there. And so therefore he would request that that be recognized. He's trying to get his occupancy for his house, and he wants to be able to keep his family close by in their own place, given the current state of housing. I'd be glad to answer any questions that I can, and thank you.
All right, I'm going to go to members of the public who would like to speak to this application. And I will ask staff if you do see a hand when I've gone out to the public to give me a wave. All right, I see no hands. So council members, Councillor Cloutier.
Through you, Chair. I went over a couple times to this to take a look at it, and the residence that the original residence on the property is a fair distance away from the water. It's not really visible from the water. I've been by it before in my boat, but if we turn this around, we're putting a family out. There's a teenage daughter and a few other people that live in the house. There's, I think, 4, people live in that house. So there we have to put them out to let them find a place to live. The patio down at the front, I mean, there's been lots of work done along both sides in that bay area that people have done work with different things. And I know there's lots of trees. He's planted lots of trees along there. So you can't really see that. I didn't even know it was there until it came up in the report. But I don't mind giving him another 3 years, not 3 plus 3. I don't mind giving him another 3 extension on this. And if the property's sold, then it has to come down. So I'm comfortable that way, giving him 3 years, but not 3 plus 3, but 3 years. And then if the property's sold, then it has to come down. Or his family, the existing family that are in it, move out, find another residence, then it has to come down.
Thank you very much. Any other comments from council? Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and thank you for the report. Um, it's one of those decisions where you don't really want to go against staff's recommendation and our own policy, even in so much staff's recommendation, but it's our policy not to have two homes on one property, and in particular in a waterfront area. But then, you know, the other side of me thinks, yeah, this is a family that's living there, and you know, we don't want to put people out. So I'm torn, but I think I would say that the fact that it's going to be, I would give a 3-year term as well. I don't want it to go any longer than 3 years. Allow them 3 years to try and find another place to live. And if the property is sold in the meantime, then I believe that we should go, you know, they should, the house should come down. So I'm reluctantly going against staff's recommendation, but I see the human side of it as well, that housing is very, very challenging to find right now. So I'm going to, I think I would vote in favor of allowing this 3-year extension for the term. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Fitzgerald.
I would support the comments of my fellow councillors so far, and be happy to put forward a motion.
Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone. I would also support the comments that have been made. I do have a question, and I'm about the shoreline activity area, and I recognize what you said, John, about the applicant has put in trees and done all of that. Having said that, was there a need to increase the percentage of activity on the shoreline, given this was for family? And I'm curious about that.
Yeah, I think when you look at the site there, as you know, with the shoreline activity area, the main part of that really is from the shoreline back 15 meters, creating that buffer. The way it's been established in community planning permits and development permits pushes it out into the waterfront as well, where the boathouse is. So they had the boathouse located. And so basically everything behind it, whether it's treed or not, is also included. Ward wasn't thinking that he was doing anything wrong. He didn't, the path that's over there is wood chips. He didn't cut any trees to put that location. So I guess, you know, if it were 2 lawn chairs and a fire pit, you know, with nothing on the ground other than the existing ground, it would be legal. But because he put a few slabs of granite there, now he's got an issue. And it doesn't really, like I said, when you look at the shoreline buffer on his property compared to others in the area, he has a very thick buffer that goes back. He hasn't built the pool house, so that's again another area that's been left in a natural state, and it comes all the way up to that corner jog on the east side of the property as well.
Deputy Mayor Armour.
Thanks, Chair. So just very quickly, I noticed in the one picture, it looks like the eaves trough is falling down. Is the house in relatively good shape? And how is the well and septic for it? Are they capable of continuing for another 3 years?
Kelsey, do you have a response?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, they each have their separate private servicing. There was a comment from building that should it stay in use, there might need to be a reinspection of the septic. In terms of the condition of the house, I'm not sure if it looks like it's it's up standing, but I didn't notice anything like out of sorts other than the eaves trough.
John, did you have a quick
Yeah,
comment?
just a quick comment there. And there was an area to the one side of the house that had a pool there, and so that had all been taken down, and so that could have been where the eaves trough, where the pool was filled in to provide the driveway down the east side of the building at the back. And each one has its own well, but I understand that when they got the septic permit, it was one brand new system, and it does accommodate both. So I had put in my report that it was 2, but afterwards I found out that it was 1 for the whole, and that permit had been taken out for it.
All right, I see no other comments. So we have the original motion to deny. Um, If there is a change to that, then I will need a mover and a seconder. Okay. Okay, so I have an amendment here, moved by Councillor Fitzgerald, seconded by Councillor Renwick. Be it resolved that the following word deny be struck out and the word approve be inserted in its place. All in favor? And that carries. And so the main motion as amended, all in favor? That carries. Okay. Kelsey, the Burnell Road application.
Oops. Thank you again, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 2010 Burnell Road. The property is within the rural designation of the official plan, and the property is within the rural precinct with Rural 1 Exception 0049 amended and Natural Constraints 1 and 2 overlay. There have been several planning applications relating to the establishment of a tourist establishment on the subject lands. In 2009, a zoning bylaw amendment application was approved for 10 tourist establishments, tourist cabins, licensed lounge, meeting rooms, storage, and recreational facilities. In 2020, a site plan agreement was approved to facilitate the establishment of this use. And then in 2022, a zoning bylaw application was approved to permit cooking and sanitary facilities within these 10 cabins. And the applicant is now proposing to eliminate the cabins and replace them with 30 camping structures and accessory buildings as part of a tourist camping establishment. The current application proposes to change the precinct from a rural precinct to a rural with exception precinct to permit this tourist camping establishment use with a maximum of 39 accessory buildings and structures, including 30 camping structures, a kitchen building, a clubhouse building with 1 dwelling unit, 2 spa buildings, 3 saunas, a yoga pavilion, a staff accommodation building, as well as permit development within 3 meters of the road allowance. Please note that the report listed 2 saunas, whereas 3 are proposed. The site-specific exception also is proposed to be removed as a tourist camping establishment is now proposed. Despite this removal, permission to locate development within 3 meters of a municipal road allowance is to be carried over through the previous site-specific exception. The official plan does permit rural businesses, including tourist commercial uses. Rural businesses generally include businesses that relate to the rural area, tourist commercial, and businesses that would not be appropriate in the settlement area. Rural businesses are generally to be a type of scale that serve the needs of the surrounding community and the commercial service area. The 2009 and 2022 amendment applications determined that a tourist establishment would be appropriate on the subject lands and limited the scale of development to 10 cabins and ancillary buildings. For the current proposal, more buildings and structures are proposed for the development of tent platforms, campsites, and accessory buildings, and the number of occupants and vehicles are also appear to be increased. The compatibility and impacts were considered for this proposal, reviewing both the existing site-specific zoning exception and the context of the rural lands. The increased intensity of the use is addressed through the changes in the site layout, positioning the campsites in the northeast corner of the property, away from Burnell Road and the unopened road allowance that goes through the property. A concept, sewage, and private water assessment was also done and prepared by Cambium, and it reviewed this revised proposal, which confirmed that the proposed use can be accommodated on the site with private servicing constraints. There are steep slopes and areas of wetlands on the property. Based on the site visit, development would not be appeared to be constrained by the steep slopes. You could see this was the former German football club, and there's like an open field where there's a clearing, existing clearing, and level land. A wetland delineation and evaluation assessment was also provided to investigate the wetland impacts and required buffers and mitigation measures. The wetland was identified on the west side of the property, close to Burnell Road. And this report states that the area of steep slopes to the northwest corner of Burnell provide limited opportunity for superficial collection of water during snowmelt and rain events. So this steep gradient near the front of the property would suggest limited opportunity for groundwater to collect and form a wetland. Therefore, a wetland did not appear in that area, and impacts are not anticipated. The property is accessed by an unopened road allowance. This road allowance is used to access other backlots and used for snowmobile trails. A legal opinion did confirm that the public access would remain over the road allowance. An agreement with the town to permit private maintenance may be required should the amendment be approved, in addition to the closure of a portion of the road allowance where the parking is proposed. The application was circulated in accordance to the provisions of the Planning Act. District staff did review the application and had no objection, provided that they were granted a 3-meter road widening, a traffic brief, and a drainage plan to the satisfaction of the District of Muskoka and their Engineering and Public Works Department. These revised comments were sent this morning and have been included in a draft substitution and would be implemented through the community planning permit should you view the application favorably. And in view of the foregoing, the application would appear to meet the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial planning statement. Please note, and then therefore staff are recommending approval. Please note that the drafted substitution that notes the changes for the sauna and the district conditions has already been prepared. Thank you so much, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or the representative. Oh, again.
My client, Lucas Rowe, is the owner of the property, and he's sitting up in the back row. And he's owned this property, and this is the second time that he's coming forth for a zoning amendment for the lands. This started way back in 2009. I worked for the previous owner after the German Canadian Club had sold it. He had a project with 10 cabins with no cooking facilities in them and capacity of 60 guests on the site. Lucas bought it in around 2021 and had a zoning amendment to allow cooking facilities and sanitary within the cabins. These were larger cabins. And given the amount of work that was done, the property was kept such that the flow rates were under 10,000 liters a day, requiring Town of Huntsville approval for the septic and not the MOE. He had rethought his plans and has come up with this nice eco cottage design with lots smaller units that would only support 2 persons. And with that in mind, basically it's a minor amendment to the zoning. The capacity of the site at 60 guests is not changing. Each of these units are designed for 2, and the zoning bylaw has a cap of 30 on that. As you can see by the drawing there, a substantial portion of the south side of the road allowance that runs east-west through the site and the west side of the property has all been left in a natural state. And the purpose of that was to keep any of the development further away from the residents on the west side of the property. You can see on the site plan the dwellings there. And so I think we're about 400 feet away from the closest dwelling, which would be the one to the north. The access is a municipal road. It's been there many, many years, and that will continue to remain open. last time we had gone through this, the snowmobile club had asked us to, make sure that we weren't closing that off, and that wasn't ever the intent. With the proposal now, we do have a number of accessory type structures. These are for the benefit of the guests only. It's not to allow people from the outside into the site on top of the guests. So it's for the benefit of the guests, and that's why you see the saunas and the kitchen and the washroom building as well. When, as Kelsey had stated, it is in the official plan as rural, and the rural supports these types of tourist commercial business. It's been zoned this way for approximately 15 years, and this is just a modification of the existing zoning. It's a very sustainable project, and the footprint is very small. There's only a 2.7% coverage on the site. The property fronts on a year-round maintained road. We have talked to the district, Rob, the Director of Public Works, yesterday to get more clarification on his comments, and there were a number of comments that they rescinded given the nature of not being able to achieve the requirement. The existing buffer along Brunel Road will stay, and that's where the steep slope is, and it's well wooded. And so even with the old clubhouse there, we're going to be quite a distance back on the lot. The staff requested an update to the water, septic servicing, and we did have the existing environmental study that was done previously. As I stated, the total flow would be less than 10,000 liters a day. And one of the items that when we reviewed the report, as I said, this is his second time doing the zoning bylaw. And with the draft bylaw, he felt that it was too restrictive in capping all these numbers. When you look at the definitions of camping establishment in the CPP, it allows for accessory uses. And what happens when we put caps on structures is, 3 years from now, if he came in and wanted to, say, do a maintenance shed, he'd be spending another $10,000 getting a zoning amendment to allow one more related use on the property. So we asked that there be some flexibility in that regard. Staff had approached us beforehand, and again, I think that we can find some middle ground on that area. I understand where staff's coming from. The main issue, I think, in the zoning bylaw is to put the cap on the units at 30 so that we're not intensifying the use of the property there. We did provide a lawyer's letter about the road previously, and again, it's a municipal road that anyone is entitled to cross. If any work is being done there, they will need to get an agreement with the town to clean it up, which probably could use. There's been some logging trucks going through there that have put some ruts in the road as well. Like I said, I think this is going to be an exciting form of tourist commercial that's hasn't been around in Muskoka. It's very unique, and a lot of the rage these days is on glamping, and I know from a number of clients that have some Airbnbs, a lot of the guests do come into town. They use the restaurants, they buy the snacks and attend the rest or the events, etc. So I think that I would ask that council support staff's recommendation to approve the updated plan, And I think Lucas just wants to speak a little bit about it because he is investing a fair bit of money in this town for the project. And just so you can see where he's coming from in his design thought. Thank you. And I'd be glad to answer any questions should there be any.
All right, so the applicant wants to speak quickly. If you can keep it short, I'd appreciate it.
Wow, okay. Can everyone hear me? I'm here really just to speak about my interest in how I plan to create and operate this site. The desire really is to create a collaborative environment that works with the neighbors and the existing uses. For the last 15 years, many of the local community members have used this space for parking vehicles and for hunt season, for accessing their hunt camps. None of my desire is to create restriction around this environment. I'd actually like to develop this so that it helps accommodate use and truly creates a community space. The nature of this resort that I want to create is the center really is around creating wellness and connecting outside individuals that are coming from outside of this community with the community itself. Some of the programming that we'll be designing will actually connect these guests with outside businesses that are located within the community at large. So really the theme around this is an ecologically sustainable environment that creates community and is fundamentally collaborative. So this can often be like maybe a little different than how a lot of these developments can be typically viewed, maybe considered to be exploitative or really just primarily economically driven. I have a deep commitment to well-being, and I think that developments like this that are focused on fostering community, fostering well-being, and are collaborative in nature are what's needed within the tourism and the resort and the commercial environment. If anyone has any questions, I can speak at length. I know that I was asked not to, but I have spent a tremendous amount of time building the programming, designing this environment, or designing the business, and I will be personally operating this myself.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I'm going to go to members of the public that might want to speak to this application.
Thank you.
Welcome, sir.
All right. Chair Stone, Mayor, and members of council, thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak this afternoon. I want to be clear that I do support responsible and well-planned development. What concerns me here is the scale of what's being proposed, the impact on the immediate surroundings, and the pattern of behavior from the proponent that doesn't inspire confidence in the plan. This property was, as you heard, previously approved for 10 buildings, plus a couple of ancillary buildings. Soon after that approval was received, the owner listed the land for sale. When that didn't succeed, after having taken the land and put it up for sale and taken it down multiple times and reduced the price, they returned with a proposal for 39 buildings, almost 4 times the original intent, on a lot that currently has limited servicing, limited infrastructure, and sits directly beside long-established residential properties, including my own. By the way, I forgot to say my name and where I'm from. So my name is Andreas Aplatol, and I live at 2158 Brunel, which is immediately beside the property. What I'm asking council to do is take a hard look at several specific issues. First is the impact on the immediate neighbors. Development of this size fundamentally changes the character of the area. What I'm concerned about is the noise, the activity levels, the lighting, and in particular the traffic that will increase substantially because of this. Is especially important because it shares a designated snowmobile route as a driveway entrance. So it's not like the two are separate. They come together. And so in low visibility winter conditions, that's a real concern. because there could be anywhere from 30 to 60 cars plus, depending on how many staff are there, and all the snowmobile traffic as well. The second part that I was concerned about, and I may need some clarification maybe, just based on what was said. My understanding is that there's the application allows building within 3 meters of the roadway. Is that right?
Go
It's-
ahead.
Yeah, thank you. It's the road allowance, so
Okay.
not the traveled road, but the unopened road allowance.
Okay, all right. So then I think I'm good there. I was more concerned about the aesthetics on 2150, or sorry, on Brunel Road as you're driving by. And so if that doesn't sound like it's included there. Okay, all right. And I think third and finally is really the applicant's past actions. As I mentioned, the sequence of obtaining the approval, the previous approval in 2022, I think it was, then promptly listing the property for sale, which was ostensibly because funding fell through. Now returning with a much larger building proposal raises some legitimate questions, I think. And so it's just that this may be more about speculative value than about long-term stewardship or respectful for the surrounding community. Given all of this, what I would respectfully ask council to require is number one, a traffic study, because I think there's true concern there. You mentioned the logging trucks were mentioned before. That has caused impact to my property already, just by the ruts that they cause and the water flow down into my property. So I've had to get the municipality come out and fix that before. So you add the 30 to 60 cars on any given day on top of that, with the logging trucks and all the other traffic that goes through there. I'm concerned about that. Detailed assessment of safety impacts would be another piece related to the shared access with snowmobiles. That would be a concern as well, because people come, flying down that snowmobile trail. And I don't know if it was really clear in the pictures, but the elevation of the roadway is quite significant, and there are always cars that have problems getting up and down that road. So, and then I think you guys mentioned that this is within the official plan, so I think that was my only other request. So I think I'm good there. So that was all that I had. If anybody had any questions.
Not at this time.
All
I'm
right.
going to go back out to the public and ask if there's anyone else that would like to speak to this application.
Great, thanks for your time.
All right. All right. We have a couple. Welcome. If you could state your name and address first, and then go
My
ahead.
name is Andre Pietrusco. I have lot 17 on concession 7, which is 6-7 on the same road. And my concern are same as my neighbor. Proposal was made for a small business. Previously, I was not opposed about that, but now we're going 30 buildings. If I counted, was 39. That will increase the traffic. I'm associated with that place since early 80s, and was a quiet spot for us. Now it's gonna be a busy place. And further, I don't believe that Mr. Lucas' intentions is to develop a business. He's trying to amend this previous permit to basically add dollar value on the lot and sell it, because it was listed and listed again and listed again. If you're trying to build a business, you don't try to sell it before that. Further, I heard that studies were done, environmental studies on the lot, and I hope surrounding areas, because there is wetland. And I hope somebody I took a picture in October. I was working on a cobbler that was damaged by logging trucks. And what do I presented?
Actually, we can't receive that right now just because,
Okay, all right. So this is black salamander,
Mhm.
which it's protected species and lives right there in the wetlands. Okay, I don't know if any study would consider that. Okay, but reconstruction the road would lead to go through the wetland again, which hasn't been done since 60s somewhere, because that road was cut somewhere in early 60s, and it's in the same path since then. So any animals that made their habitat in there will be disturbed if you do any significant construction in there. And down the road, I will be with the noise. Okay.
all right. Thank you
So
very much.
Thank you, that's all I wanted to say.
Thank you. Come on down, sir.
Oh, my name?
Please come down. Yeah. Oh, I hate that. Go ahead.
Hello, my name is Corey Wilting. I own the property beside Lucas there, and the one concern that I have, and it's probably not a concern, I just want a commitment that there's a private road that goes from concession 7 to the private road that runs in front of all of the other all the other properties, so that they could be accessed and my property could be accessed. Lucas has assured me, and he seems like a good man, that he has no intention. I would just like to have a commitment, because that would, if down the road somebody else owned it, that would completely make inaccessible my property, and also all of the other properties that go all the way down to concession 4 and 5. And not because Lucas, I trust him, but if down the road somebody else purchased that and tried to block that, then we would be in a lot of trouble. So if that's possible to make that permanent somehow, then I like I like a lot of the things that he's talking about. Now, I've only been there for a number of months, so these other concerns may be very legitimate. I just haven't had any myself.
Wonderful. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
John, you have a very quick comment?
I could address its question and the other gentleman about the road, maybe.
If you,
I trust you're speaking about the road that goes through the site, and then there's also one at the back end that goes north-south, a road allowance there.
North-south.
Sorry.
That's okay.
On the map here, there's the road that comes here, and this gives access
That's
to.
correct.
So that has to stay open. It's a
Yes.
municipal road. It's on a municipal road
Exactly.
allowance.
And then this
And then there's,
portion here.
yeah, that's beyond his property. So
Okay.
this road, from what I understand, it's one of the original roads that were back in the
You got it, yeah.
1890s. And I've been down that road, and I've
Yeah.
been all through the back there.
Good.
The intent is to keep it all open.
Yeah.
From the parking lot down to the entrance, which the other man had suggested, That would be the area that would get fixed up. We wouldn't be doing any work on that section there because, again, a lot of people use ATVs and snowmobiles beyond where the driveway and parking area is.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to go once more out to the public. Anyone that would like to speak to this application? I'm not seeing anyone. Is there? Is there one online? All right, can you bring them in?
Hello? Hello?
Yes, I can see and hear you. You can go right ahead.
Hi, I'm Lorenzo. I'm Lucas's neighbor. I own lot 16 in concession 7. From day one, Lucas has been professional. He's my neighbor. All the other guys, Andreas and Andre, are my neighbors. We all get along. We all like each other. I butt up against him on the property Northeast Center. So this project has an impact to me. I want to thank you, Chair Stone, and the mayor for setting up this meeting. I just have a quick verification. I just want to ensure that the road is maintained as it is, that we all have access to get to where our properties are, owning 86 acres. It's a beautiful spot. This plan, I'm a capitalist. I'm in favor of what this council wants to do. But on September 9th of this year, I had a Constable Gagnon of Huntsville come to the property where I had trespassers coming onto the property. There was garbage and some unsightly chemicals left on the roadway that impacts me. And I just want to ask the city and the council if they could guarantee maybe adding some signs and some major fines to anyone that's dumping and not respecting the land. I have moose, or we will have moose in the area. We have bears in the area. I'm working with the Ministry of Natural Resources to protect the turtles and the salamanders and everything else. So I just want to, as a neighbor, I have some concerns that the properties, that everyone has access and everyone's allowed to do what they want within reason. And I don't want to take up any more of your time, but I love Huntsville. I love the area. We have a small maple syrup production and the place is gorgeous. So I just want to say thank you for your time and just ensure that the road isn't amended at all so we have access and the privacy and that major fines for anyone that violates our beautiful land. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And we do have bylaws regarding illegal dumping. And severe fines. Did you wish to, Kelsey, say anything about maintaining that allowance?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, so the road will be used for their, it's the road allowance, it's an open town road allowance, but it will have to be maintained for their the use of the property. So they'll have to enter into an agreement with the town for private maintenance of the public road allowance. So I coordinated with the legal and agreements coordinator, and that's what she said we would need is some form of agreement, whether it's the development agreement or another agreement with that department. And then because they'll have to maintain access in accordance with the Ontario Building Code and fire standards, so it would have to be maintained to a certain specificity. So that agreement will denote that. Yeah, thank you.
All right. Thanks very much. Council members, comments or questions? Councillor Cloutier.
Through you, Chair. Just wondered, what's the timeline of construction? Okay. Okay.
Mayor Alcock?
Thank you, Chair Stone. Just a quick question. There was reference to the need for a traffic report, and I noticed in the proposed motion, we are asking that the following matters be addressed to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services, and one of those is a traffic impact brief and a stormwater management report prepared by a qualified professional. So we're asking for that as a condition of approval.
Councillor Renwick.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and through you. I guess my question, just very briefly, the three gentlemen that spoke, I'm not clear exactly where you reside. I don't think we got the addresses. So would they mind just coming back and just saying or telling us what the actual addresses were? Sorry?
Kelsey?
A lot of them are back lots, so they don't have don't have specified addresses like on Burnell Road. They're accessed through this. That's why I think some of their concerns are this route, so they could access their lots. Yeah, no problem.
Thank you. Kelsey, I've got two motions to substitute here, one with very specific numbers of buildings and one not. Which are you suggesting we use?
So I believe there's been another substitution crafted, if we wanted to take time to just make sure that it's the appropriate one, but I think it is available.
All right, you know what? Let's take 5 minutes. We're going to take a 5-minute break and be right back. Your seats. All right, welcome back. Okay. So, you've seen the original motion in the package, and I have a motion to substitute. So I'm going to read it. Moved by Councillor Cloutier, seconded by Councillor Renwick. Be it resolved that Planning Council substitute motion DEV 2025-119 CPPA 35-2025 HTE 2766787 Ontario Inc. 2010 Burnell Road for the following. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve Community Planning Permit Amendment Application CPPA 35-2025 HTE, the purpose and effect of which is to change the precinct on the lands from a rural precinct to a rural with exception precinct. 2, permit a tourist camping establishment with a maximum of 39 accessory buildings or structures, including up to 30 camping structures, staff accommodation buildings, an owner's residence building, maintenance, utility, storage, amenity buildings, including but not limited to food and beverage preparation and serving buildings, a clubhouse building, spa, sauna, shower, bathhouse, steam room facilities, a yoga pavilion. And 2, permit development within 3 meters of the unopened road allowance. And 3, require that the following matters be addressed to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services or designate prior to the issuance of a community planning permit. A 3-meter wide road widening is dedicated to the District of Muskoka across the entire frontage of the property for road widening purposes. And B, a traffic impact brief and a drainage plan prepared by a qualified professional and submitted to the satisfaction of the District of Muskoka. And further that previous site-specific exemption, RU10049, be removed from the lands. Are there any comments or questions? Seeing none, all in favor? And that carries. And now I'll call the main motion as amended. All in favor? And that carries. All right. Moving right along. Madeline. No, Kelsey. You're still with us.
Still here.
Keep going, girl.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, the subject property is located at 1317 Highway 141. The property is within the rural designation of the official plan and within the flood zone precinct, rural precinct, and has previous site-specific exception RU11156, natural constraint 1, 2, and flood overlays. The applicant is proposing to create one new rural residential lot, and this bylaw application is to change the precinct on a portion of the land from rural to rural residential for the proposed severed land, and from enter rural with exception XXXX precinct to reduce the minimum required frontage on an arterial road from 150 to 12 meters on the retained lands. So you can see the red here is the proposed severed lands. There's a zoomed in, and then it's quite a long piece of land. The rest is the retained lands. The proposed severed lands would have approximately 3 hectares and 198.3 meters of frontage on Provincial Highway 141. The proposed retained lot would have approximate area of 18.5 hectares and 12 meters of frontage on the provincial highway. A right-of-way to grant access over the retained lot in favor of the severed is proposed to facilitate a shared entrance. There is a cold water stream which crosses the northern portion of the property, east to west, and is contained within a flood zone precinct, as well as there are wetlands at the back portion of the property and steep slopes dispersed across portions of the middle of the property. These features and areas are contained within the natural 1 and 2 overlays and flood zone overlays. Other mapped wetlands and tributary features may also exist on the lands in the vicinity of the cold water stream and flood precinct. So you could see the wetlands at the very rear of the property, and then this cold water stream at the front. Previous site-specific exception RU1 1156 also applies to the portion of the retained lands. This permitted a self-storage facility southeast of the cold water stream with a maximum area as illustrated in a property detail schedule. The schedule details required setbacks, buffers for this intended use. The site-specific exception is proposed to remain. However, staff recommends it be placed in a new RU exception precinct as noted in the report. The proposed severed lot would meet the area and frontage requirements. However, the retained parcel would not, with 12 meters of frontage, whereas 150 meters is required. Lots in the rural precinct require a maximum area of 4 hectares, and the proposed retained exceeds this requirement. However, the frontage is grossly deficient. Being proposed with 12 meters. The maximum frontage requirements are in place to ensure safe access to properties and safe travel conditions for all users on the road. The proposed frontage for the retained lands is deficient by 122 meters, which is not in line with intentions of the official plan. Staff would recommend that the wetlands be placed in the conservation precinct as well as a part of this bylaw amendment. Additional wetlands and watercourses may exist on the site were identified in support of the District of Muskoka's integrated watershed management project. The placements and limits of the conservation precinct have not yet been confirmed by the applicant. The subject lands do also abut an aggregate operation. As this proposal is for a rural residential lot, a technical report was required in support of the application. The author outlined the scope and development abutting the aggregate land use and the stationary noise impact assessment. It was determined that there are areas within the retained lands which noise levels exceed the applicable criteria under the Ministry of Environment and Conservation and Parks. The author recommended setbacks distances as mitigation measures to be applied to sensitive uses on the retained lands. The study concluded that the severance is feasible and will not be restricted by the surrounding noise and vibration impacts, provided the recommended setbacks are implemented. However, the report did not review any preclusion or hindrance of the future expansion of the aggregate use, so the review of the aggregate policies is incomplete. Just to note, there is an existing garage on the proposed severed lands, which would be converted, and then you could see portions of the stream here and here. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, and we did receive comments from the District of Muskoka that said they would not be supportive of this application based on the deficient frontage. Comments provided from the MTO stated that a pre-severance minimum frontage requirement for new access connections is 300 meters and 150 meters for mutual access connections. While the existing lot has only 195 and therefore would only qualify for a mutual entrance as is proposed. However, they further stated that new lots of records would have a minimum of 45 meters of frontage where the speed limit is over 70 kilometers an hour, and that the 12 meter frontage proposed for the retained lot is not sufficient and would not meet this requirement. The Ministry of Transportation has further required a pre-consultation with them, and that associated drawings be provided. Through review and analysis of this application, it would not appear to conform with the intent of the official plan or be consistent with the provincial planning statement, and therefore staff are recommending denial. Thank you, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'll call on the applicant or the representative to make any comments. All right, we got a new player.
Good afternoon, Chair Stone, members of committee. Graham Huizinga with Tulloch, 80 Main Street West, P1H1W9, Huntsville. I'm here on behalf of Neil Marchildon, who's the owner of the subject lands. He's here and available to answer any questions that the committee might have as well. I'd like to thank staff for working with us on this application. There are some overlapping considerations definitely with this one, and while I don't agree with the recommendation for denial, I can appreciate from a policy perspective why staff prepared that recommendation. However, would like to kind of go over the ethos of how I, arrived at the design for this severance with Mr. Marchildon and kind of a way to achieve his goals for severing the property. A lot of the policies in both the town and district official plans contemplate access and rural lot frontage standards from two perspectives. The first being safety, and the second being compatibility and character with the rural area. So obviously both of those considerations weighed very heavily on our design for this property. We are working with an interesting situation here where we do have an existing access that serves two different developed areas on the property already. So as far as I was concerned after visiting the property, that access was a known quantity. We weren't talking in hypotheticals. We were talking about an access onto the provincial highway that's already present, and you can already observe how it functions. So from a safety perspective, I was satisfied that that was appropriate. Now, what we were talking about initially with Mr. Marchildon and myself was there was lots of back and forth, lots of iterative design with this proposal. Do we proceed with a second access? Do we proceed with an internal shared access? And eventually we went with a shared access for a couple of reasons. And the first reason was that I had actually reached out to the MTO quite some time ago now, about 6-8 months ago, and had heard back from them the first part of Kelsey's comments that were included in this staff report, which was that the MTO would be supportive of a shared access on this property, regardless of whether it continued to be one lot or it was applied via severance. And that's was kind of the big determining factor. The secondary factor was simply that a second access would be tricky from a site design perspective. As you saw on the site map, there is a wetland area, a creek area that we're dealing with on the property that kind of separates the area with the existing garage building from the balance of the property. So ultimately it was decided to proceed with a shared access. I think a shared access is, not only appropriate, but I think it's preferable in this case and in many cases, honestly, in rural environments, especially on roads that are intended to be higher volume, higher traffic, and higher speed. The fewer access points you have, the fewer variables you have for people coming out and creating a safety concern. So for that reason, along with the comments we had received initially from MTO, it satisfied me that the shared access was an appropriate mechanism to achieve what we were trying to achieve. Now, as I mentioned, the second item that we were looking at in terms of reduction in frontage, on face value, a reduction in frontage from 150 meters to 12 meters seems pretty extreme. But what is the 150 meters in policy at the town and district level trying to achieve? In my opinion, it's trying to achieve adequate spacing of properties, making sure that properties are well buffered from one another visually, aesthetically, and with large areas of natural environment being maintained in their current state. As I mentioned, what we're dealing with here is separation of existing uses. We're talking about two developed areas that have already been established, a driveway that's already been established. We're basically executing an administrative exercise by preparing this severance. We know what the visual impact and the aesthetic impact of development on this property is because it's already been established. From the highway, depending on the time of year, you can see the garage structure. You will never be able to see the house that's on the proposed retained lot. It's well back into the bush, and it's in quite a beautiful spot, actually. well kind of above that beaver pond area that's in the back of the property. So that along with the recommendations of the noise and vibration study that indicated that there were specific areas on the property that were appropriate for development, and also confirmed that the conversion of the garage on what is to be the severed lot to a dwelling, which is the applicant's intended course of action, is appropriate and is not going to create any issues in terms of compliance with MECP noise and vibration guidelines. Now, just to kind of address Kelsey's comments about the aggregate policies, as far as I'm concerned, when we prepare a noise and vibration assessment, and that assessment concludes that development can occur on a property without being impacted by a pit or quarry use, that conclusion kind of goes both ways. That also means that the pit and quarry can continue to operate in the way that it has been operating, with no negative impacts anticipated to development on the lots that we're talking about. And for that reason, you know, pits and quarries are required to maintain minimum standards for noise and vibration to off-site sources. That's what our report concluded that we would achieve pending the implementation of the recommendations in that report. And so I'm satisfied that those aggregate policies have been adequately addressed. And of course, through the preparation of that study, we were in contact with the operator of the pit with the plans that were proposed, basically, and no concern was raised in that regard with their continued operation of the pit. So a couple of items in the staff report that's before council today, I think were kind of brought to our attention fairly recently, and I think for that reason, we'd like some additional time to consider the impact of those comments. The first being the amended comments, I'll say, because we received different comments a few months ago when we pre-consulted with the Ministry of Transportation. The comments that the town received through circulation indicated that a new lot of record would require 45 meter minimum lot frontage, and that was not something that was brought to my attention when we initially consulted with the Ministry. That is achievable with the layout of the property that we have, but again, we'd be moving the entrance or the lot line to achieve what I see as an arbitrary minimum frontage requirement from the Ministry's perspective. But I would like the ability to consult with the Ministry and figure out where those guidelines come from, and if they're set in stone or if they're something that is a recommendation, or if they're even applicable, because it does mention in the comments that those requirements are for new lots of record, and the 12 meter frontage is going to be applied to the retained lot, which is an existing lot of record. So that piece of this, I'd like some additional time if council's willing to grant a deferral to come back and have a better answer for you. Secondarily, staff had recommended in the staff report that the large wetland area to the rear of the property have a conservation precinct applied to it. And ordinarily, I understand that's a common practice, and you know we've had that applied for other applications I've brought to you in the past. Ordinarily, I wouldn't have an issue with that. However, staff are also recommending a 30 meter buffer applied to that limit of that wetland feature. And as far as I can tell, that will kind of subsume or include the existing house that Mr. Marchelin has constructed legally with permits to the rear of the property there. And so I don't want to create a situation of non-compliance through approving this application where we have you know, an existing structure that was approved and permitted but is now within a conservation precinct and is legal non-complying. And could preclude him from, in the future, seeking additions or amendments to that structure. So for those reasons, I'd like to respectfully request that deferral be granted today, so we can come back early next year and have those answers for you. However, I did want to kind of present my rationale for the proposal, as today is the public meeting, and happy to be available for any questions that committee might have, as is the property owner. So thank you very much.
Great, thanks very much. It is a public meeting, so I'll go to the public. Anyone would like to speak to this application? I'm seeing none. Council members, any comments or questions? Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and through you. Obviously, it's going to come back potentially as a deferral, so I won't say too much, but I completely understand why staff can't recommend this. Like, it makes sense from a policy perspective why they can't. But then from the common sense perspective, I look at it as there's almost 700 feet of road frontage here, and we're taking two buildings and turning it into 2 dwellings where 2 people can live on a large chunk of land. And I tend to agree with if the 30-meter buffer comes over and goes over where the house currently is. In my experience in real estate, that could even cause trouble down the road for financing, et cetera, if you're going to get money. So I'd like to try to avoid that headache if we can. And maybe we'll discuss it when we come back. But I know Mayor Alcock, myself, and others have talked about shared driveways and shared access in the rural area. There's a whole lot of this that I like, and respecting the fact that staff, of course, have policies that would preclude them from recommending.
Councillor Cloutier.
Through you, Chair. Been past this property quite a bit, before and after the construction that's been there with the drive. It's a long, straight stretch of highway. There's no curves, there's no corners. There's a hill on the west side that's back, I'd say, almost a kilometer away. So visibility is good for a shared driveway. 2 residents on there, 4 vehicles a day. At most, you know, there'll never be another driveway west of this property because of the quarry, because the entrance and the quarry, and I wouldn't want to see another driveway put in just in case it interfere with the stream. The stream is being left alone the way it is, the way the entrance is now, and I'd like to keep it like that. And I don't see a problem with the MTO, like with the entrance out onto the highway at all.
All right, any other questions? Councillor Fitzgerald.
Thanks, Chair Stone. Thanks, Kelsey, for your report. I'm curious, and it's a can of worms, but MTO seems to change their mind quite often. Were you privy to the original agreement or direction that they provided to the applicant?
Go ahead.
Thank you for the question. Through you. Yeah, I just saw the correspondence over email. I know there have been different people, so I imagine that policy maybe wasn't communicated the first time, but probably existed. But yeah, I think it would be great to just get some clarity before we go forward with this. And yeah, we could chat with the person that provided the comments to seek that clarity. Yeah.
Right. Just a couple further comments. I can't agree enough with Councillor Morrison's comments and I know our beliefs that shared driveways are a thing of the future to lead to more sustainable development. And I can't figure out why the MTO wouldn't accept that as, you know, 1 entrance off the highway versus 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. So from every standpoint, it just makes sense. And I guess lastly, the conservation, the permit's been granted and there's a structure on that, in that area already. I think to further restrict that would be not fair to the applicants. So that's it.
All right, I have 2 motions to postpone. Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Mayor Alcock. Be it resolved that the matter of Community Planning Permit Bylaw Amendment Application CPPA 29-2025 HTE be postponed until such time as the following items have been submitted to the satisfaction of the town of Huntsville. 1, further consultation and pre-consultation comments from the Ministry of Transportation regarding frontage on the provincial highway. And 2, confirmation of the location of the conservation precinct. Comments or questions? Councillor Fitzgerald.
I think both Councillor Morrison and I alluded to the fact that conservation information seems very restrictive on the applicant moving forward. So I'd like to propose an amendment to remove that.
Okay, I'll go to
Yeah, I think amend it in such a way, and I want Kelsey to chime in, not to remove necessarily, still to do what they're trying to intend with the conservation, but maybe exempt a certain footprint around the home if there's ever a small addition needed for down the road.
Director Maxwell.
Thank you, Chair Stone. This is just to postpone the application, so a decision on whether or not the conservation zone should be included with the 30-meter buffer that's being proposed would be at the next meeting if the applications are going to be approved. So it's yeah.
Just to follow up to that,
Go ahead.
I think there may be great expense incorporated with that still being in there moving forward when it's presented back to us again.
All right, Kelsey?
I think where it sits now, it just allows us to have further conversation about it. We don't know where the addition is, so it just depends where it is. And sometimes there would be, like we have other policies within our community planning permit bylaw that don't let us be 30 meters, but if it's at the back of the property, and that's not a concern. So I guess this gives us a bit of levity to see if there's an issue.
Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Just to add to it, I absolutely see that as important to be in. I think the applicant said that they would like to have further conversation around that to get to the point where you're perhaps going, Councillor Fitzgerald. So I don't see this as being a hindrance.
Councillor Morrison?
Last comment, Chair Stone, I promise. I trust our staff and the applicant to work that out. But also, Kelsey, can I ask you the status of the quarry? Is it inactive? Is it active? I just look at the distance from these buildings away from the quarry, and then you look at the further down of the quarry, there's homes way closer to the quarry across 141. So I wonder if they have satisfied that, if we need to burden them too much, or if it's something that is required, if it's inactive or active.
Thank you for the question. Yeah, it is active. They did say that portions of the retained land would go over the noise threshold, so there would be concerns. So any further development would need to be set back a certain distance. So that's the mitigation measure they have proposed. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to call the question on the postponement. All in favor? And that carries. I also have another for the consent. Be it resolved that the matter of consent application B23-2025 HTE be postponed until such time as the following items have been submitted to the satisfaction of the town of Huntsville. Further consultation and pre-consultation comments from the Ministry of Transportation regarding frontage on the provincial highway and confirmation of the location of the conservation precinct. All in favor? And that is carried. It's postponed. Okay. Madeline, whenever you're ready, you can go ahead with the Old Schoolhouse Road application.
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. Okay. Thank you. And through you, Mr. Chair, the subject property is located at 90 Old Schoolhouse Road. The lot is designated rural in Huntsville's official plan and is under the waterfront residential 60-meter with previous site-specific exception SR1 1594, the rural precinct, and has a natural constraints 1 and 2 overlay in the community planning permit bylaw. A community planning permit bylaw amendment application was submitted to change the precinct on a portion of the lot lands from rural precinct to rural residential with exception precinct. The exception would apply to the severed lot outlined in yellow here. Oh, right there. To permit the creation of one new rural residential lot that would front on and be accessed by an unopened road allowance and permit year-round development. A concurrent consent application was submitted for the creation of this new rural residential lot. The severed lot, as mentioned, shown in yellow, is proposed to have an area of approximately 2 hectares with 162 meters of frontage along an unopened road allowance, and the retained lot is proposed to have an area of approximately 38 hectares with 402 meters of frontage along an unopened road allowance, and currently contains a single detached dwelling and telecommunications tower. So the retained lot is the lot shown in green, and the existing dwelling is in this location, and a telecommunication tower is there. The amendment to change the precinct on the property from rural to rural residential would permit a smaller required lot size for the proposed severed lot and reduces the number of uses when compared to the rural precinct. In either instance, for year-round development, new rural or rural residential lots would require frontage to be provided along a year-round maintained roadway. Permitted uses on these properties without year-round road frontage include a woodland retreat only. The proposed severed and retained lands would meet the minimum frontage and area requirements of their respective precincts, however, would front on and have access via an unopened road allowance. Just to note, in 2004, site-specific zoning was placed on a portion of the property contained within the retained lands to allow shoreline residential development in proximity to a small water body. The application we are currently considering would be increasing the amount of development along this unopened road allowance, which has no municipal services nor plans for any future services. Furthermore, the official plan requires all new development in rural areas with the exception of recreational uses, such as hunt camps, to front on and be accessible from a year-round road. And in this instance, Old Schoolhouse Road is approximately 300 meters from the proposed severed lot. Just noting further policies in the official plan, rural residential development should be encouraged in areas where there is existing rural residential development. Access to community facilities and demand on public services such as fire, police, and home care can be provided. Rural residential development should not be located in remote, undeveloped areas, and these policies intend to limit permanent development in areas where services are not readily available. Following these policies directs new residential growth to areas where existing and planned services are available and accessible. Further, having regard to the alternative rural residential lot standards, which were approved by District Council on November 8th through Official Plan Amendment number 6 and our CPPA application heard earlier at this meeting. Staff note that these policies don't change the access requirements outlined for rural residential lots, and they would still, if reducing frontage, would still have to be on a year-round maintained road. Although just noting that that doesn't apply to this application because they are meeting the frontage and area requirements. Further, natural constraints mapping has identified a wetland, slopes, unevaluated streams, and high wildland fire hazard on the property. And the location of the lot is outside of these identified natural heritage features and hazard areas. However, a building envelope has not been confirmed. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. Internal comments note development restrictions and items to consider when development not on a year-round road, including limited or unavailable emergency and municipal services. District staff also noted that they would not be opposed to the approval of the applications as long as Town Council is satisfied that health, safety, and municipal interests and access have been appropriately addressed. Through staff's review and analysis, the applications do not appear to meet the intent of the official plan, nor be consistent with the provincial planning statement, and staff are recommending denial. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions if you have.
Thanks very much. So call on the applicant or the representative to make any comments. Welcome, Mr. Russ.
Thank you, Chair Stone, committee. The main thing that I want to concentrate on, which still may take some time, is that we've had a planning justification report required, but I notice in the staff's report they don't reference it. I have no clue if any of you have seen it. We have a number of copies available if people would like to see it, and we would like to read some of it, especially if you've never seen it, because obviously it's by Lanny Dennis, who happens to be here today. We don't know why it wouldn't have been sort of part of the milieu, shall we say. Are you okay if I
am. It's not going to take too long.
Well, it's 9 pages, so, but my associate, Nathan Zimmer, has a 1-page excerpt.
I like
so what
one
I'll
page.
Do,
One page is better.
Well, so what I'll do is I'll just say that Lanny has a different opinion. He is obviously, we were hoping he would support it. He has a position that says that it's something that is supportable. So since no one's seen it,
Bring it on.
Yeah, so I'll just ask Nathan and I'll sign in while he comes and does his thing.
Beautiful. Welcome.
Hello, Nathan Zimmer, 101 Hunters Bay Drive, Huntsville. Just to note, my summary does touch on some of Lance's justification report, but some of it is also in response to the staff report itself and district comments. So we're representing the owner of 90 Schoolhouse Drive, as noted on the staff report. The owner is looking to create a 5-acre lot from his existing 1-acre lot property. Regarding the provincial policy statement, as outlined in the justification report, the proposed lot would be consistent with the 2024 provincial policy statement regarding rural lands, outlining that permitted uses are residential development, including lot creation, where site conditions are suitable for the provisions of appropriate sewer and water services. With 5 acres of land, the lot can comfortably accommodate a private septic system and well. Regarding the district of Muskoka official plan, the district is promoting rural land development as shown in the new official plan amendment 6, which reduces the required lot size for rural properties. The district has reviewed the proposed application and noted they do not oppose it being approved today. Regarding the community planning permit bylaw, staff report noted that the following natural constraints were noted: wetland, steep slopes, existing stream, and fire hazard. The wetland, existing stream, and fire hazard overlays, as noted, are outside of the proposed lot to be severed, and the steep slopes are located to the edges of the proposed lot where development would be restricted due to property setbacks. The proposed lot would also meet the minimum lot size setbacks as required by the CPP. Although 8.2.13 of the official plan does require that the property be accessed for year-round access from a year-round publicly maintained road, we are dealing with an existing private maintained road, essentially a shared driveway, that is already providing access to 90 and 102 Old Schoolhouse Road, as well as the existing communications tower. Maintaining this existing driveway or access road would reduce any disturbance to the existing environment that would be caused by upgrading the road. We could also propose sprinklers could be used to maintain safety where firefighting access may not be possible. The new lot would also add to the municipal tax base without any increased expense to the municipality services already being provided for Old Schoolhouse Road. We hope the committee will support our application to create a new residential lot that would provide much needed housing for our community, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Perfect. Thank you very much. I've got members of the public that would like to speak to this application. I'm not seeing any, so I'm going to move on to council. Any comments or questions? Councillor Clark.
Thanks, Chair Stone. I'd be happy to support this application. I've traveled the road personally, and the applicant does maintain it. It's a good road in there, so I don't have any issues with that. And the district sees it the same way, so I'd be happy to put a motion on the floor that we approve this application, if there's a seconder.
Mayor Alcock.
I would second that motion.
Moved by Councillor Clark, seconded by Mayor Alcock. Be it resolved that Planning Council substitute motion DEV 2025-121 CPPA 31 2025 HTE 90 Old Schoolhouse Road for the following. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve Community Planning Permit Bylaw Amendment Application CPPA 31 2025 HTE, the purpose and effect of which is to change the precinct on the lands from a rural precinct to a rural residential with exception precinct, with the exception being 1, to permit the development on lot that does not front upon or have direct access from a year-round municipally maintained road. And 2, to prohibit development on the lands prior to the issuance of a community planning permit. And 3, to require that the following be addressed to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services prior to the issuance of a community planning permit. The owner shall enter into an agreement with the town to acknowledge that access will be on a non-year-round maintained road and no municipal services will be available, and that the dwelling must be fully sprinklered or include other suitable fire suppression measures to the satisfaction of the town. Are there any comments or questions on this substitution? All in favor? And that carries. And the main motion as substituted, all in favor? And that carries. And apparently I have to read this. For consent file B25-2025 HTE, as provided in the report, the motion to deny the consent is now withdrawn as the amendment has been approved by Planning Council and no objections have been received. Therefore, the Director of Development Services has the delegated authority to approve the consent. Done. All right, Madeline. Next, the Hamilton application.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Through you, the subject property is located at 49 Concession 2 and 3 Road West. The lot is designated rural in Huntsville's official plan and is under the rural precinct and has a natural constraints to overlay in the community planning permit bylaw. An application was submitted for a community planning permit bylaw amendment to change the precinct on the lands from a rural precinct to a rural residential with exception X precinct. The purpose of the exception is to reduce the minimum required lot frontage from 134 meters to 113 meters, require a minimum 15-meter wide treed vegetated buffer be maintained or established along the public roadway, except in the location of an approved entrance and driveway, and require a minimum 20-meter front yard setback for all buildings and structures. And all of this would be to facilitate the creation of one new rural residential lot. The exception would be required for both the severed and retained lots, and it would be, the same exception applying to both. A concurrent consent application was submitted for the creation of one new rural residential lot. The severed lot is proposed to have an area of approximately 5 hectares with 113 meters of frontage and is currently developed with a single detached dwelling and accessory structures. The retained lot is proposed to have an area of approximately 30 hectares with 113 meters of frontage and is currently vacant. Both properties would have, both the severed and retained lots would have frontage along Concession Road 2 and 3 West. The conditions of consent have been included on the screen, which have also been included in the report package, and these include the standard conditions along with a condition for the CPP amendment to be approved. And just to zoom in, the gray and pinkish lot here is the severed lot that contains the existing dwelling, and the green lot, that lot outlined in green would be the retained lands. Respecting lot requirements for new rural residential lots under the CPP bylaw, both the severed and retained lands would exceed the minimum area requirements for the rural residential precinct. However, the frontage for both lots would be deficient by approximately 21 meters under the standard requirement. Having regard to the alternative rural residential lot standard policies, although not in full force and effect as of yet, these policies consider to facilitate new lot creation in certain circumstances where appropriate servicing, access, and environmental concerns are addressed. With these policies in place, a rural residential lot with a minimum frontage of 60 meters and 1 hectare in area could be created if normal rural residential standards would not be possible. Additionally, the requirement for a treed buffer, increased lot front yard setbacks, and natural heritage preservation measures would be included. In this instance, the proposed lot configuration meets the alternative rural residential lot standards to permit a reduced frontage. Staff have addressed the requirements of this new policy within the site-specific exception through the requirement for the vegetated buffer and increased setback, which development on the severed lands currently meet that. So there's no non-compliance being created with any existing structures. Further, natural constraint mapping has identified slopes within 20 to 40% gradients, and in this instance, the degree of sloping is noted to be on the rear of the property and not within any identified building envelopes, so wasn't seen as a concern. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act. District staff had no objection to the application, and their comments were included in the report package. And through staff's review and analysis, the applications appear to meet the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial planning statement, and as such, staff are recommending approval. Thank you for listening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments. Good afternoon, Mr. Dennis.
Good afternoon, Chair Stone Committee. Lanny Dennis Planning, Box 254, Nova, Ontario, P0A1R0. Had a chance to review the report and obviously listen to Madeline's presentation and concur with them to approve the application. I think, and I think it's an accurate, reasonable assessment of what we're proposing. There's no issues that I have with the conditions that were proposed for the severance, and none with the draft zoning bylaw. This lot is sort of falling under the new rural residential lot requirements. So, but it's large, lots of frontage, lots of area, no issue with respect to being able to build on the property and provide a septic and a drilled well and a driveway. And it's at this concession 2-3 road. It's sort of almost at the very end of it. So it's on a dead end street. This is sort of the last lot, if you will. So I don't think it's going to impact anybody visually. They've added the additional 20-meter setback and the 15-meter vegetative buffer as part of the rural residential lot. The standard generally reflects the area. There's no natural heritage features that we're offending, and certainly no constraints that would interfere with any development of the site. So I don't think there's been any comments that I'm aware of that were received in opposition, and the district actually is in favor of the application. So hopefully you folks would see fit to approve the application. Thanks.
Thanks very much. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak to this application? Nope. All right. Council members, comments or questions? Oh, love it. Moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Councillor Fitzgerald. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve Community Plan and Permit Bylaw Amendment Application CPPA 32 2025 HTE. The purpose and effect of which is to change the precinct on the lands from a rural precinct to a rural residential with exception precinct to permit the creation of one new rural residential lot, with the exception being 1, to reduce the minimum required lot frontage from 134 meters to 113 meters. 2, require the minimum 15-meter wide treed vegetative buffer to be maintained or established along the public road, except in the location of the approved entrance and driveway. And 3, require a minimum 20-meter front yard setback for all buildings and structures. All those in favor? And that carries. All right. Madeline, let's keep plugging away here. Ravenscliff Road.
Alrighty. Okay. Thank you. And through you, Chair Stone, the property is located at 2421 Ravenscliff Road. The lot is designated rural in the official plan and is under the Rural and Natural Constraints 2 overlay in the Community Planning Permit Bylaw. A Community Planning Permit Bylaw amendment application was submitted to change the precinct on the subject lands from a rural precinct to a rural residential with exception X precinct to permit a lot with an area of 1.2 hectares, a rural residential with exception Y precinct to permit a lot with an area of 1.2 hectares and frontage of 139 meters, and a rural residential with exception Z precinct to permit a lot with an area of 1.9 hectares and frontage of 75 meters. All of which is to permit the creation of 2 new rural residential lots. The exceptions would permit reductions to the minimum required lot frontages and lot areas to facilitate these lot creations. And staff recommend that exception X also prohibit development and site alteration on the property until authorized through a community planning permit, requiring appropriate development control techniques to be applied to mitigate negative impacts to deer wintering habitat, a minimum 15-meter wide treed vegetated buffer, and a minimum 20-meter front yard setback for all buildings and structures. Concurrent consent applications were submitted with the amendment application for the creation of the 2 new rural residential lots with approximate dimensions and areas as previously noted and as listed here on the screen. The conditions of consent for only severed Lot 1 have been included within the report package, and these include the standard conditions along with conditions to require the community planning permit bylaw amendment to be approved and conditions requested by the District of Muskoka. And that severed Lot 1 is this blue triangular shaped lot to the north portion of the property. The amendment to change the precinct from rural to rural residential on the property would permit a smaller required lot size for the proposed lots. However, an increase in lot frontage is required for both new rural and rural residential lots when fronting along arterial roadways. In this case, minimum lot frontage requirements are increased to 150 meters. Respecting this proposal, severed Lot 1 would meet the frontage requirements, however, would be deficient in area. Further, severed Lot 2 and the retained lot would be deficient in both frontage and area requirements. Having regard to the alternative rural residential lot standards, these policies did not change the access requirements outlined in the official plan for rural residential lots and would not apply a reduced frontage along arterial roadways. In this instance, the configuration of severed Lot 1 would meet the alternative rural residential lot standards, and staff have addressed the requirements of this new policy within site-specific exception X. However, severed Lot 2 and the retained lot would not meet the alternative rural residential lot standards. Further, natural constraints on the site have been identified as deer wintering area stratum 2. Development within identified deer wintering habitat areas will be located and occur in such way that coniferous vegetation required for shelter and food is conserved. Additionally, new lot creation in stratum 2 deer wintering habitat should be restricted to single detached dwellings on lots that have minimum dimensions of 90 meters by 90 meters, as well as a minimum area of 1 hectare. To ensure the protection of deer wintering habitat, a section has been included in site-specific exception X for severed Lot 1 to prohibit development until such time as appropriate development control techniques are implemented through a community planning permit. Further, when considering development that abuts a District of Muskoka roadway, policies state that development will satisfy all of the policies and requirements of the authority, and development shall only be permitted where the applicable approvals and permits have been obtained. District staff provided comments which noted support for the creation of Lot 1 and outlined conditions to be included as part of an approval, but objected to the creation of severed Lot 2 and the retained lot. Their comments also note that Ravenscliff Road is a Class A district road, classified by its road function, which generally connects communities and creates a substantial amount of traffic. In order to ensure the efficient and safe flow of vehicles along Class A roadways, the policies establish minimum frontage requirements of 150 meters to maintain minimum speeds, minimize the number of entrances, maintain the rural character, and public safety. In the case of the proposed severed Lot 2 and retained lot, the minimum frontage requirements are not met, and district comments were included in the agenda package. Further, I just wanted to note for shared entrances, the minimum required frontage is 300 meters, and the severed Lot 2 and retained lot, when those frontages are combined, is still deficient with that 300 meters, so a shared entrance was not considered as an alternative option in this case either. The application was circulated in accordance with the provisions of the Planning Act, and through staff's review and analysis, portions of the application appear to meet the intent of the official plan and be consistent with the provincial planning statement, and other portions do not. As such, staff are recommending partial approval as listed within the recommendation, which would apply the community planning permit amendment to only severed lot 1 and permit the creation of only one new rural residential lot. Thank you for listening, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Thanks very much. I'll call on the applicant or representative to make any comments. Is there one online?
I believe they are online. So I'll
Okay, bring
them
them
to
in.
the meeting.
Okay, can you hear me now?
I can hear you and I can see you. You can go ahead.
Thank you. I'm Frank Scalai. I live at 2421 Ravenscliff Road. And I'm asking to sever 2 lots to help with the housing shortage. I've been a resident for 27 years in the Huntsville area and a builder for 25 of those years. So just hopefully that we can create some more lots to build some more houses for the future. And I'll leave it with that.
All right. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak to this application? I don't think so. Council members, any comments or questions? All right. Councilor Renwick first.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and through you. Like, I hear what this gentleman is saying, although he was very brief about it, but the fact that they are creating 2 additional lots within, say the downtown core. It's not downtown, but it's close enough. And I know it's not within our policy, but it is on a roadway that there's a lot of access. We need smaller lots, and this is being created. So I don't know if there's an amendment to the motion. I don't think there's one been prepared. But I'd like to consider something.
Thank you for that. Mayor Alcock.
Thank you, Chair Stone. So the objection from district and our own staff with respect to severed lot 2 is safety around the regional road. That's primarily it.
Through you, Chair Stone, that's correct. Yep, it's the deficient frontage along Ravenscliff Road.
But if I may follow up, so you said it would be deficient anyway, even if we combine a couple of them, it's still deficient, and yet we're approving part of it and not. I'm sort of curious about our logic around that.
Madeline?
Thank you. Through you, Chair Stone. Yeah, I'll clarify. So severed lot 1 currently is proposed to have 213 meters of frontage. So the district requires 150 meters along that segment of Ravenscliff Road. So severed lot 1 meets their frontage requirements and would meet our area requirements under the alternative rural residential lot standards. So that's good. Severed lot 2 and the retained lot, both of the frontages are deficient. So I believe one is 139 meters and the other is 75. So they would be below that 150 meters on their own. When district also has policies for shared entrances, but the frontage of 2 lots combined has to be a minimum of 300 meters. Yeah, so those 2 lots combined still wouldn't reach that 300 meter frontage requirement. So that's where we wouldn't be able to recommend approval because they wouldn't have that option to explore a shared entrance.
Councillor Morrison.
Thank you, Chair Stone, and through you can, and again, completely see the rationale of staff on why and the district staff. And I guess the applicant is a victim of geography a little bit, that the last lot is triangular and kind of needs that amount of frontage to get a building envelope, it sure seems. If you added up all of the frontage, we're looking at about 10 meters short for the 3 lots, 10 to 12 meters short. So if there was a deeper lot on severed lot 1, we'd probably find a way to do this. It'd still be the same amount of driveways. It's on a flat stretch of road. I don't see a safety concern personally. I've driven down that road many times and lived down that road off South Wasiosa. So while I understand why the reasoning for not recommending approval, I don't think these 3 lots would provide any safety issues whatsoever. They provide housing, and I would be very much in favor of amending it to approve it.
Any other comments? All right. Councilor Renwick, you suggested an amendment. Madeline, you would like to say something. Go
Sir,
ahead.
I just want to let you know that we have prepared an alternate amendment.
So, yes,
Yes, please, Councillor
and you
Stone.
have a seconder? Okay. All right, so I have a motion to substitute, which I will read. Moved by Councilor Renwick, seconded by Councilor Morrison. Be it resolved that the Planning Council substitute motion DEV 2025-123 CPPA 33 2025 HTE Scaly 2421 Ravenscliff Road for the following. Be it resolved that Planning Council approve Community Planning Permit Bylaw Amendment Application CPPA 33 2025. The purpose and effect of which is to change the precinct on the lands from a rural precinct to a rural residential, with exception X precinct, rural precinct with rural residential, to a rural residential exception Y, and a rural residential exception Z precinct to facilitate the creation of 2 new rural residential lots, with the exception being, for exception X, is reduce the minimum lot area required from 2 hectares to 1.21 hectares, prohibit development on the site, alteration on the property until authorized through a community planning permit, and to require the following to be addressed to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services or designate prior to the community planning permit issuance. A, appropriate development control techniques applied to mitigate negative impacts on deer wintering habitat be implemented. And B, a minimum 15-meter wide treed vegetative buffer be maintained or established along the public road, except for the location of an approved entrance and driveway. And C, the minimum 20-meter front yard setback for all buildings and structures applied along the lot line abutting the public road. Exception Y, reduce the minimum lot frontage requirement along the arterial roadway from 150 meters to 139 meters, and to reduce the minimum lot area requirement from 2 hectares to 1.21 hectares, prohibit development and site alteration on the property until authorized through a community planning permit, and require the following to be addressed to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services or designate prior to the community planning permit issuance. A, appropriate development control techniques applied to mitigate negative impacts on deer wintering habitat be implemented. B, the minimum 15-meter wide treed vegetative buffer be maintained or established along the public road, except in the location of an approved entrance and driveway. And C, a minimum 20-meter front yard setback for all buildings and structures applied along the lot line abutting the public road. And exception Z, reduce the minimum lot frontage requirement along the arterial roadway from 150 meters to 75 meters, reduce the minimum lot area requirement from 2 hectares to 1.91 hectares, prohibit development and site alteration on the property until authorized through a community planning permit, require the following to be addressed to the satisfaction of the Director of Development Services or designate prior to the community planning permit issuance. A, appropriate development control techniques applied to mitigate negative impacts on deer wintering habitat be implemented. B, minimum 15-meter wide treed vegetative buffer be maintained or established along the public road, except in the location of an approved entrance or driveway. And C, a minimum 20-meter front yard setback for all buildings and structures applied along the lot line abutting the public road. Comments or questions? Want me to read it again? All in favor? And that carries. And the main motion as amended, all in favor? And that carries. Okay. So I have the consent here. Be it resolved, moved by Councilor Renwick, seconded by Councilor Morrison. Be it resolved that the following word deny be struck out and the words provisionally approved be inserted in its place. And further that the following conditions be added. A registerable description of the severed lot be submitted to the town, including all rights of ways and easements, along the registered copy of the reference plan, the owner's taxes being in good standing, a site inspection fee of $272 being paid to the town of Huntsville, consent finalization fee in the amount of $250 being paid to the town of Huntsville, 5% cash in lieu of parkland being paid to the town of Huntsville on the severed land, a community planning permit amendment being approved on the lands to permit the intended development, the applicant obtaining a conditional permit from the District of Muskoka for the proposed access onto the district road, and the lands being subject to an agreement with the District Municipality of Muskoka pursuant to Section 5126 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, as amended, respecting the location of wells and relation to the district road. All in favor? And that carries. And now the main motion as amended. All in favor? Thank you. Wow. Okay. As a reminder, no, that's not what I need. Now that all comments have been received, I declare these public meetings respecting the above applications be concluded. We'll now move to the non-public portion of the meeting. We're closing in on the end here. All right, Madeline, Peacock Bay.
Thank you. Through you, Chair Stone, the subject property is located at 146 Peacock Bay Road. The lot is designated waterfront in Huntsville's official plan and is under the flood zone precinct with the natural constraints 1 and flood zone overlay in the community planning permit bylaw. An application has been submitted to permit the construction of a 33.5 square meter sunroom enclosed porch addition with a finished floor elevation of 286.68 meters above mean sea level and recognize an existing 84.5 square meter dock on the lot. A Class 3 community planning permit is required to permit an increase in the maximum projection of a dock from 15 meters to 22.8 meters to recognize the existing dock, permit a 33.5 square meter expansion to an existing legal non-complying structure, reduce the front yard setback from 20 meters to 19.5 meters for the sunroom enclosed porch addition, reduce the setback from a cold water lake from 30 meters to 19.5 meters for the sunroom enclosed porch addition, reduce the setback to type 1 fish habitat from 30 meters to 19.5 meters for the sunroom enclosed porch addition, and permit development within the flood overlay. Conditions of provisional approval require the owner to enter into an amending agreement, including financial securities, to implement the recommendations and actions as outlined in the plans and technical reports, and to confirm that development will proceed in accordance with the community planning permit. Additionally, conditions of final approval have been listed within the report package, and amongst the standard conditions include a condition for the sunroom addition to be flood-proofed and for habitable space to be above the static flood elevation. As noted, the lands are within the flood zone as the entirety of the property is below the flood elevation for Lake Vernon, and restrictions apply to development on properties of this nature, and development is generally prohibited. In this instance, and as outlined in the report, the sunroom will be flood-proofed as necessary, and the addition is also noted to be 3-season and would not be constructed for year-round habitation. In regards to safe access, it is not feasible as Peacock Bay and the subject lands are all below the regulatory flood elevation. However, the proposal would not increase the intensity of use at the property, as it does not add additional habitable space beyond what already exists. Respecting the safe disposal of sewage, no changes to the existing septic system are proposed or required as part of this application. Further, the CPP requires that minimum elevation of doors, windows, or other openings in habitable buildings or structures be located above the regulatory flood elevation, and for Lake Vernon, this is 287.48 meters above mean sea level. In 2020, the District of Muskoka received updated mapping for Lake Vernon prepared by Hatch, which is noting the static flood elevation for Lake Vernon to be 286.68 meters above mean sea level. And the proposed sunroom enclosed porch addition has been designed to be located above the minimum elevation, where the finished floor elevation will be at 286.68 meters, and all proposed windows will be above 287 meters above mean sea level. The proposal maintains the character of the area and is appropriate for the property as it centralizes the area of development, incorporates renaturalization of the shoreline buffer by implementing a planting plan prepared by the Natural Edge program, aims to recognize a non-complying dock, and addresses flood hazard risks. Respecting the dock due to the location of the property, it does not appear to have any negative impact on navigation within this portion of Lake Vernon. Natural constraint mapping identifies the shoreline as being type 1 fish habitat, Lake Vernon as being a cold water lake, and the lands being flood prone. To address the natural constraints on the lot, Frycorp Ecological Services was retained and provided a fish habitat assessment. The shoreline was confirmed to be type 1 fish habitat through the assessment, and noted revegetation works along with additional mitigation measures to be included will be implemented as part of the CPP permit. The application was circulated in accordance with the Community Planning Permit Bylaw. District staff noted that they would not be opposed to the approval of the application, provided that town staff were satisfied that the proposed sunroom enclosed porch would be considered a minor addition in the floodway, and that appropriate development control techniques are used to implement the recommendations outlined in the fish habitat assessment. Their comments were included in the report package. And through staff's review and analysis, the application would appear to meet the intent of the applicable criteria for approval under the CPP bylaw and is consistent with the provincial planning statement, and therefore staff are recommending approval subject to the conditions as listed within the report. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thanks very much. So calling the applicant or representative to make some quick comments. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair Stone. Good afternoon, Council. Thank you to staff for their report. My name is Sam Soy. I'm a senior planner with Tulloch at 80 Main Street West in Huntsville. I'm assisting the applicants here today with this CPP application. So as Madeline has outlined, and as is outlined in the justification report that was submitted, the purpose of the application is to permit a proposed sunroom addition to an existing dwelling and to recognize the projection of an existing dock. The existing dwelling is located within a flood zone overlay, and where the bylaw does permit consideration of minor additions to legal non-complying buildings, provided certain requirements are satisfied. In this case, we've ensured through a survey that the floor height of the sunroom will be above the static floodline elevation for Lake Vernon, and the proposed conditions of approval will require floodproofing of the sunroom to the elevation required by the bylaw and in accordance with building code requirements. Significant improvements to the shoreline buffer are possible on this property, and back in June of this year, the applicants had already entered into an agreement with the District of Muskoka through their Natural Edge stewardship program to improve the buffer. At the time, that was irrespective of this application that has now been submitted. Implementation of the district-directed planting plan will now be ensured through the amending agreement with the township, and will result in a substantial net improvement to satisfy the buffer requirements of the town. The implementation of the planting plan will also satisfy the buffer-related recommendations of the fish habitat assessment that was completed, and both the recommendations of the habitat assessment and the planting plan will be implemented through that agreement with the town. The fish habitat assessment also considered the location of the existing dock and recommends that it remain in its current location. And I have reviewed the recommended conditions of approval with the applicants, and we have no concerns, and I'm available for any questions. And Mr. McDonald is also here today if there's any questions. Thanks.
Perfect. Thanks very much. Council, comments or questions? Councillor Cloutier.
Through you, Chair. I've been past this property, and they're very good stewards of the lake, as you'd say. The yard is impeccable, the buildings are impeccable, and I'm to have full confidence in this addition going on that all requirements will be met.
Excellent. I see no other hands, so I'm not going to read the motion because it's exactly as in your package. So I'm going to call the question. All in favor? And that carries. All right. Moved by Mayor Alcock, seconded by Councillor Morrison. Be it resolved that confirmation bylaw 2025-128 be received and passed this third day of December 2025. All in favor? That's carried. Moved by Councillor Renwick, seconded by Councillor Cloutier. Be it resolved that we do now hereby adjourn at 3:31 p.m. All in